Good evening, สวัสดีครับ Welcome to Thai PBS World. I'm Thep Chayong.
Yes, I'm Natha Gomonwatin. Welcome to Thai PBS World. We bring you report and analysis around Thailand because we bring the world to Thailand and bring Thailand to the world every Thursday.
All right, Kun Natha, tomorrow, originally was supposed to be a very important day as far as politics is concerned. It will be the first time that members of the National Council for Peace and Order, the NCPO or the military junta, will be sitting down face to face, full scale, for full scale meeting with representatives of all the political parties. That was the original plan.
Yes.
But as far as things stand today, it doesn't look like things will be turning out the way the junta wants.
Yes, but actually it's the big meeting that probably every party should be looking forward to, but it turned out that not many parties will decide to join the meeting tomorrow. So we shall see what's going to happen. Even the location is being questioned because the location of the meeting will be at the Army Club and it's been raised whether it's proper to discuss election process.
I'm sure that for many politicians, being there at the Army Club on Vipavi Rangsit Road will be quite a deja vu. Because 4 years ago, exactly the same place was used as a venue for General Prayut, who was then the army chief, to meet face to face with political parties and representatives of those political movements that were fighting each other on the streets, right? And the meeting back then, 4 years ago, was supposed to be an attempt by the army to mediate, to sort of achieve a breakthrough, to end the confrontation that had the potential to be violent. So going back there again tomorrow for many politicians who were there 4 years ago would be sort of a deja vu.
Yeah, it brings back that memory of that particular day when the military junta took over the country 4 years ago. But tomorrow some political parties have agreed to join the meeting, especially Palang Pracharat Party, but other major parties decided not to join.
It's still not clear as to how many parties exactly will turn up at the meeting. But according to the Election Commission today, they said at least 50 parties will be represented at the meeting. Don't forget that we now have close to 100 parties registered. So it wouldn't be a surprise if as many as 50 parties would be represented. But of course, as Kun Natha just said, most of the major political parties, including Pheu Thai, Democrat Party, Future Forward Party, have declared that they will boycott the meeting.
Yes. So let's take a closer look. What are the major parties which decide not to join the upcoming meeting tomorrow? All are quite big parties คุณเทพชัย like Democrat Party เพื่อไทย ไทยรักษาชาติ เพื่อชาติ and Future Forward Party or อนาคตใหม่
They seem to have very similar reasons for not joining the meeting tomorrow. They said that they don't want to be part of an attempt to accord legitimacy to the military junta, which they, of course, they have been opposing for quite some time. And then they believe that since it's quite clear that General Prayut Chan-o-cha, the Prime Minister, will be will be joining the election as a candidate for Prime Minister with one of the parties. Then they believe that it would not be appropriate for him to be sitting at the top of the desk of the meeting tomorrow. It would be sort of quite strange, for him to be sort of running a meeting with a political party. So these are some of the reasons cited by these parties to explain why they are not joining the meeting.
Yes, obviously it's the big reason because of the role of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha concerning the meeting tomorrow. And Kun Abhisit Vechachiwa, leader of the Democrat Party, is very outspoken in his decision not to join the meeting tomorrow, especially on the role of General Prayut Chan-o-cha. He said, we don't see any use of joining the meeting. The invitation from NCPO makes it clear. We'll be there just to listen. It's not going to be a consultation.
So let's see how many parties will eventually be present at tomorrow's meeting. It's still not clear what the major items on the agenda of the meeting will be, but according to sources close to NCPO that we have talked to, General Prayut, who intends to chair the meeting himself, wants to use the occasion to sort of build a bridge between the military and the political parties. And according to what he said today, he said he wanted all the parties represented in tomorrow's meeting to sort of be committed to the idea that whatever the outcome of the elections, tentatively scheduled for February next year, all parties should accept it. And that's what he intends to tell the meeting tomorrow. But I don't know how many people will be there to listen to his words.
Yes, but obviously after the military junta 4 years ago, all the time spent, all the energy spent must be for the day of tomorrow, because it will be the clear date if they announce the election date.
Yes, right. Kun Prayut is obviously frustrated by what he sees as the failure of the politicians to reciprocate what he sees as his friendly, good gesture. So he said, up to them. If they don't come, though, that means that they don't want to follow the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, how can you become a government?
Yes.
And that was yesterday's statement. Yes. And today's, he mentioned about this again.
Yes. He said in boxing, the referees would summon boxers to hear the rules. If boxer decide, it only means they are not ready to fight. If boxer decline.
Yeah. So he was saying something like that, along the line that tomorrow's meeting is supposed to be a venue for the NCPO and Election Commission to explain the ground rules for the general elections, right? So he expects everybody to come and listen to the rules. But since they're not coming, he implying that they are not ready to join the elections.
Yes. For the party which decline to join the meeting, there are some comments from Pheu Thai party. For example, Secretary General Phumtham Wechayachai also said that General Prayut should take high road if he wants to return as premier, especially if he wants respect and recognition from the public and the international community. That's one argument from Pheu Thai party.
But it's also expected that at tomorrow's meeting, the NCPO would make clear as to when the ban on political campaigning and political gathering would be lifted. And that is very much, something that all the political parties want to hear, because they are so eager, to start campaigning for the election.
Yes. Of course, upcoming election is the one that many parties are waiting for, but we can see the atmosphere is not quite uplifting, it's not quite encouraging at the moment.
Okay. So tomorrow's meeting will be taking place amid speculation as to what the future of Kun Prayut will be. Of course, he has been keeping his cards close to his chest as to whether or not he will be on the list of candidates for Prime Minister of one of the parties or not. And of course, there have been, every time that he encounters journalists this day, this question is bound to pop up, whether or not you will join Palang Pracharat, or when will you join Palang Pracharat.
Yes.
So this is his answer yesterday, when he was asked again whether or not, Palang Pracharat would be his choice. And he said something to the effect that already he has already made up his mind in a way.
Yes.
And admitted for the first time that joining Palang Pracharat is under consideration.
Yeah.
And he said these people, being the people in the Palang Pracharat party, who happens to be members of his cabinets, many of them, he said, these are the people that have been working with him for some time.
Of course.
So if he does decide to really join one of the parties, then these are the people that he would want to join, because they have been working with me.
Yes. Perhaps that's the clearest argument that he can say so far, but of course he hasn't announced formally of what party he will be joining. But the rumor is the Palang Pracharat party may offer his name as the top in the list of the party list member.
All right, last week there was a very important development as far as the future politics is concerned, but it received very little attention and publicity. It was the beginning of the selection process of senators. The application for the Senate was open during the last week of November. But we heard very little about the progress, about the activities involved, right?
Yes. In fact, there are about 7,200 who filed for interest to apply to join as the candidate for senators. But according to the report, actually the Election Commission aimed at having 90,000 candidates to announce that they would like to join in this selection process. So it means that not much interest even among candidates.
You have to say that the response to the process has been quite lukewarm. And that means that not many people are interested in this process. There has been an explanation that because people believe that eventually, whatever happens, whoever applies, the final decision will rest with NCPO.
Yes.
So you apply either because you are confident that you will have the ears of the NCPO, or because that you just want to try your luck. And that's good, a very good explanation.
Yes.
Why there has been such a lukewarm response to the process. So that was the beginning of the process. So the next several weeks, we will see several rounds of self-selection among these candidates. They will select among themselves. From the list of 7,200 candidates, the list will be sort of shortlisted to a final list of 200 people. And if you look at the scope of the powers of the Senate, and then it's quite interesting because under the provisional clauses of the current Constitution, the Senate will have quite extraordinary powers.
Yes, especially power to vote in selection, vote for Prime Minister.
Yeah,
that's the key, the keynote that people keep watching this very closely on the power of the senators.
Okay, so let's go back to the basics of the selection process and see how these people, will be selected. Okay, we look at the process. This is what that is happening. I'm sorry. The Senate, the senators of the maiden parliament after the election will comprise 250 senators. But after 5 years, the number will be reduced to 200. But for the first 5 years, the number will be 250.
And who will be the senators? Let's take a look in the graphic that NCPO will have to pick 50 from 200 finalists from candidates, which would be nominated through self-selection process at district, provincial, and nationwide levels.
So this process began at the last week of November, but the real selection process will continue in the next few weeks. Okay, next then.
And NCPO will pick 194 out of 400 nominees from Senate Selection Committee.
So this will be a separate process from the one we talked about earlier.
Yes.
So these nominees will be picked up by a Senate Selection Committee. But again, the 400 nominees will be submitted to the NCPO, who will decide on the finalists, and that will be 194 of them.
And next, and 6 through X office appointments, member of military top brass, for example. It means that will be closely connected with military.
So these are 6 ex-official appointments. And who are these people? They are the members of the top brass of the military, Supreme Commander, the Army Chief, the Navy Chief, the Air Force Chief, the National Police Chief. So these are 6, positions reserved for those so closely aligned with the military junta. So altogether, there will be 250 senators for the maiden parliament after the election.
clearly they are powerful groups of people.
So they will be serving as a very solid political base for the next government. Yeah.
Yes, and they will deliberately and approve bills passed by House of Representatives.
So these are the traditional roles of the Senate in Thai politics. I mean, they deliberate and they approve bills that are passed by the House of Representatives. So these are the normal scope of powers they have.
Yes. And let's see the next one. The power of the Senate means they will have oversight over political office holders. For example, launch impeachment against those charged with corruption and abuse of power. And next one, they will endorse appointee to Constitutional Court and independent bodies. For example, Election Commission, Anti-Corruption Commission, Office of Auditor General.
So under normal circumstances, the scope of powers of the Senate is already quite big. I mean, it has been part of the Thai parliamentary system. But it's the additional powers given to them under the provisional clauses that are being seen by critics as being threatening to democracy.
Yes. And next one is the key point that people are quite concerned with the role of the Senate is approve appointment of Prime Minister.
No, but besides that, I mean, they have the authorities to monitor, offer advice on and expedite national reforms in accordance with the 20-year national strategy. This is very important because we have heard a lot about this 20-year national strategy, which critics see as a political straitjacket. I mean, that will hinder the work of the next government. And so the Senate will have the power to make sure that the next government after the election will follow the national strategy. I mean, if they don't, then the Senate had the power to fight off with them, to impeach them. So that's why we believe that the powers of the Senate after the election in the modern parliament will be quite extraordinary. Yeah.
Does it mean there is no room to deviate from the 20-year national strategy? It means MPs have to follow this strict guideline?
It's because it's a law, so it has to be closely obliged with. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's the next scope of the next aspect of power of the Senate that has raised quite an uproar. I mean, that is because the next Prime Minister after the election will be decided in the Parliament, right?
Yes.
But it will be decided in the joint sittings of the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Yes.
So that means the Senate will have a very important and very crucial role in deciding who the next top executive of the government will be.
Yeah, because that means if military junta can have selection committee, influential in terms of selection committee, it means that they can have influence over 250 senators. And you can imagine we would have MPs and senators totally for 750, which will have power in selection of the Prime Minister. So that's the path of what will happen in terms of election process. And the process of selection senator is now have begun.
Yeah, but to be sure, nothing is cast in stone. It means that even though, I mean, at this very moment, the military junta, the NCPO, or Kun Prayut, are confident that the Senate will be always on their side because they will be handpicked by them, right?
Yes.
But in the long run, I mean, there are doubts that whether they can still continue to command loyalty from the senators. Don't forget the fact that in the past, I mean, senators often broke down in groups, in factions, right? We have heard of a group of 40 senators in the past that would, I mean, take different stands from the rest of the senators. So in the future, I mean, even though, I mean, all the 250 senators will be handpicked by the NCPO, but in the long run, we can be sure that because of political interest because of political pressure or because of any other reasons. And there will be faction within the Senate.
Yes, no smooth path over politics in Thailand. As Kun Thepchai say, it's not written in stone. So we will have to see what the atmosphere will be like in terms of politics in Thailand.
And what is also worth noting is that the term of the first Senate will be 5 years compared to 4 years for the House of Representatives. So that means that the Senate has a much longer longevity, much lasts longer than the House of Representatives.
So it means they are more influential than
in the sense that the Senate will have a role in picking at least the next 2 prime ministers. At least, I mean. So I mean, that's why critics believe that many of the mechanisms written in the Constitution are clearly designed to be in favor of the powers that be at the moment.
Yeah. So we cannot help when people ask about the validity or how people can trust this constitution. It's still the question hanging in the air.
Okay, I mean, some of the parties that will be running in the election have already declared that once they get into power, the first thing they would do is to have the constitution amended. But whether or not they can do that, given the solid support the NCPO have in the Senate, then it's a big question mark whether any political party can really make changes to the constitution.
Yeah, so we shall look forward. Next step is tomorrow, the big meeting of NCPO and 5 Rivers. And we are going to have a live interview with Professor Jade Donavanik. If the line is ready, just let us know for the phone interview with Professor Jade Donavanik. He's chair of the Faculty of Law College of ASEAN Scholars. So he is now on the phone with us. สวัสดีค่ะอาจารย์เจตค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ
Thank you for joining us. So are you looking forward to tomorrow, the big meeting between NCPO, Election Commission and political parties?
Not really, because actually they've met many times, and I think we all saw that out of all these meetings that had been convened in the past, they were not really that fruitful in terms of steering our political movement as well as our political parties in order to get all these people together hand in hand and make good progress for the election to come. So I don't think that this upcoming meeting will be that fruitful and will be so developmental. However, it might be a table that lots of things be cleared out. For example, what happens with all the constituencies, all these 350, were they planned in order for Palarat to be at the advantage of other parties, or they were just this type of calculation in which it will have to happen because this is a new election and this is the new electoral system. This is new constituencies numbers. So all these will have to be as it was supposed to. So therefore, these can be cleared out and many other things to come. Whether or not the election on the 24th of February will be certain, whether or not the running of the parties will be a problem, what are they going to do, and whether or not there will be any intervention with the election commission. I think those are like general aspects of the elections. I don't think they can get too deep into all the problems of election, and I don't think they can actually guarantee that this country in the future, let's say if the 24th February is what's so certain, will have a free and fair election. I don't think they can guarantee that.
Dr. Jade, critics have some question about the role of the Prime Minister, General Prayut, who is widely speculated to be on the list of the candidates for as the next Prime Minister. But the fact that he'll be sitting at the head of the table tomorrow may not be something appropriate. So what do you think?
Well, to me, I always said and I said it out several times, that the NCTO shouldn't have anything to do with the election. And my own personal view is that we shouldn't write the constitution in which the government or the provisional government will have to talk with the election commission. If we set the election commission as an independent body, as an autonomous body to deal with elections, then there should be the autonomy of the election commission and independency of the election commission. And the election commission should be talking to the political parties. And should there be anything to be done with the elections, it should be out of the election commission. It shouldn't have anything to do with the provisional government or the government. So in this sense, I, with my own personal view, see that General Prayut shouldn't have anything to do with the political parties. He shouldn't sit not even as the chair, but not even as participant. And all the government bodies, all the government personnel, all the government people shouldn't be sitting talking with political parties. Once the political parties talk with the election commission, they come up with some solution or they come up with proposals. If these related to the NCTO, then they propose to the NCTO. And the NCTO should be in line as much as possible if it doesn't have anything to do with national security. And if it's not that serious in national security, then they shouldn't have their hands, they shouldn't have their presence in any of all these meetings in order to be free and fair. Because, of course, at this point, General Prayut, if he said he doesn't have anything to do with political Palang Pracharat, then it will be a joke for the whole world, not only for this country. So I think, in my own view, he shouldn't have anything to do with them. But
so
I think he won't listen.
So there is justification in the decision by some of the major parties, notably the Democrat Pheu Thai, to boycott tomorrow's meeting then?
Well, I think it's their right not to come to the meeting. And I would say that if we look upon this as a boycott, we can also look at it that they are using their right not to be present. Because General Prayut is using also his right to be present. If General Prayut choose to have something down the road to be unfair and unfree, then the political party should have their right not to come, not to be part of it. Because otherwise, if all the political parties come, especially the big ones, then General Prayut will say, okay, you were on the same table with me. Why didn't you say something? So I think they choose to opt out in this sense. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
Ajahn Jade, what do you see as the best outcome possible after the meeting tomorrow for the Thai politics?
I think NCTO would still be the establishment, will be the authority of Thai election in the future. The election commission will be underdog and will be preempted by the NCTO by way of their order or whatever announcement they will make. And it will be nothing different from what has happened several years coming off this point. So I don't see any change, but I don't know whether or not it will become a little bit of a chaotic situation in the future once NCTO was setting all these things by the election commission or through the talk with all these political parties where the main actors, the main players are not being presented. And in the long run, Palang Pracharat gather all these constituencies as well as the party list, then become the mainstream of the government, but cannot control the parliament as a whole. And they will have to use the senators, the 250 senators that both of you were mentioning a little bit earlier. Then it will be pretty much a chaotic situation in our country where the senators grouping together with the House, where they were supposed to check and balance the House. The House cannot be controlled by the majority. Or we might not have a government of a majority. We might have a minority government, and that will be even more problematic. You can't push any law forward. So I see a little bit of that situation right now.
Any hope from voters, first-time voters, or people who can vote this time? What they should do in this election?
I think in the beginning, at this point, politics should not be a playground for NCPO. Should General Prayut want to come into politics, he should announce that he will be in Palang Pracharat, or Palang Pracharat should just announce that they are going to ask General Prayut to be their prime minister candidate, come into the picture, play as other parties will have to be playing. Then that can be a ground in order for everybody to play. And I think in the end, it's up to the voters. It's up to the people who would elect their own member of parliament. Then I would say that that's fine. But if they keep on playing and trying to get all the advantage on their side, playing with the rules, playing at the games, not announcing anything, and doing all these things as governments, whereas they were just announcing some of their policy as a political party. But behind the scenes, in a hidden agenda, I don't think that will be fruitful and that will be fair for other parties.
Jade, we know that there are a lot of factors that make the result of this election so unpredictable. But as far as you can see at this juncture, so what do you think should be an outcome that is best for the country? Not best for NCP or any particular parties, but best for the country. What should that outcome be?
Best for the country is that if Palang Pracharat acts just as Pheu Thai Democrat, and if Palang Pracharat wins, that's fine.
Okay.
Palang Pracharat has all the factors in their hands, and everybody would think that they have all the rights to set up the government, to ask any other parties to join. But that will have to be done politically, by way of a fair rule, a fair ground of playing. So I think that would be best for the country. But if Palang Pracharat is not playing as Pheu Thai, is not playing as Democrats, but they're playing behind NCPO, or they're playing as a hidden agenda of NCPO, I think that will be a problem for the country in the long run and down the road.
Okay, so we have to see next move is the meeting tomorrow and what's the come out will be
yes, we'll
for
see.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you very much, Professor Jade Donavanik, for joining us for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, ครับ
ค่ะ ขอบคุณค่ะ
All right, so it's quite clear that he is not as optimistic as many people.
Yes, because of the problem he see from election process, from NCPO role and the role of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha, who still hasn't been clear what his role will be after election.
I think that's the biggest issue at the moment now, that the stand so unclear that being taken by General Prayut. So every day he has to face this question of whether or not he will jump, headlong into politics. He still try to be very evasive. And we have been hearing more and more criticism of his role because he's playing a sort of a double games now. On one side he said, try to keep a distance from what's happening, but on the other hand, his people, are heavily involved in preparing for the election.
Yes. So do you think the air will be clearer after tomorrow? We shall see.
We shall see because we don't know exactly what the agenda will be. Of course, we hear that the NCPO will take the opportunity, to say when the ban on political activities will be lifted. But again, that's just our guess. But let's see what will happen then.
Yes, and we'll keep you updated with Thai politics next week. But with the technology disruption, Kun Thepchai, it's the big challenge for many leading universities around the world. In Thailand, we see online curriculum. Many leading universities in Thailand are trying to adjust their curriculum. And about 2 weeks ago, director of the London School of Economics, Jade Donavanik, were in Thailand, and she delivered a keynote speech. What's the disruption happening in education? And she was also on the stage with 2 Thai experts to offer their view about the situation of education in Thailand. And I got the opportunity to have exclusive interview with Jade Donavanik, and she offered her view about how the LSE, the London School of Economics, has to adapt in this technology disruption?
To prepare young people for a very different world. Young people today are going to work in a digital world, and we have to prepare them for that. And second, we have to prepare them for much longer work lives, because people are living longer and they're likely to have to work much, much longer than previous generations. And I think those two things mean we have to help students get digital skills and familiarity with the digital world much earlier. And we also need to give them opportunities to reskill and retool many times in their life. The idea that they will get all their university education between the age of 18 and 22 and that's it is very old-fashioned. People will need to reskill and retool again in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s and maybe even their 60s.
And what does that mean for university in terms of being disrupted because of the new demand or new skills demanded in the job market?
For example, at the London School of Economics, one of the things we're doing this year is every student, no matter what they study, will have to get basic skills in data sciences, so they understand the world of data and how to work with big data. We're also looking at moving away from teaching them lots of facts and really teaching them how to learn, and focusing more on research and analytical and critical thinking skills and working in teams, because that is also something that can't be done by a robot. So we're thinking about the curriculum. We're also thinking about supporting them differently when they finish. So many of our students today don't want to work in a big company. They want to be entrepreneurs. So our careers service is looking at how to support their entrepreneurship by providing an incubator and an accelerator and support to new businesses.
How have the experts at the LSE have to adapt to this change, because perhaps they are used to what they have been doing for a long, long time as experts in universities? Are you facing resistance from academic community?
Yes, it's a big change, and academics are often very conservative and very traditional in what they do. But I think you always have some innovators. There's always resistance. You know, one of the things we do at the LSE now is we try and record all of the lectures, so that when students, if they miss the lecture or they didn't understand something, they can go back afterwards and listen to it again. It's very interesting. What we have found is that the students listen to the lectures again just before the exams, when they are revising and they want to remind themselves what the lecturer said, which is fantastic. Now, some lecturers, when we first said we would do this, said, oh, but you're going to tape the lecture and then you don't need me anymore and I'll lose my job. And we said, no, the point is the students can now listen to the lecture, but they want to use the time in the class with you to discuss it and understand it better and develop their own thinking.
From the expertise from the LSE, what do you think Thailand can learn from adaptation of university like LSE and to bring into education disruption in our country?
The digital revolution means that students in Thailand can have access to all the world's knowledge. I think educational institutions in Thailand can tap into that. They can hear the most famous philosopher in the world who's lecturing at Harvard, or one of the great economists at the LSE, and it's all available online. But just watching it online is not enough. The universities and the teachers they have here have to help them absorb it, understand it, debate it, come to their own views. So I think the trick is now what we call blended learning, where you blend what's available digitally, but also what's available with human interaction.
In terms of political context, Brexit atmosphere in the UK, how is it like? And it perhaps not quite uplifting for young students or for young generation in the UK. How do you see that, and what's the challenge UK is facing at the moment because of Brexit?
Yeah. Well, Brexit is dominating the news in the UK, and I think for many young people, on average, most young people did not support Brexit. They like the idea of being part of Europe. They like to travel and work and study in Europe. And so I think they tend not to be very enthusiastic about it. But I think, you know, we're fortunate at the LSE that because we're so global, we have not been adversely affected. So there has been a decline in European students at other UK universities, but in the LSE we've actually seen it go up, which is a wonderful thing. So I think we're very committed to staying very global and open in our perspective, whether Brexit happens or not.
And in the global context of politics with rising populism or protectionism, especially in your speech, you also raised this point that perhaps global politics is moving into populism and protectionism. What's your concern in that direction from economic perspective?
Yes. Well, I think the rise of populism reflects the fact that many people feel they didn't get a good deal from globalization and they haven't benefited from the economic progress that has occurred. So there's a big issue around inequality in the past, and I think there's also a huge issue about their prospects for the future. They're worried whether they'll have jobs, whether their children will have jobs, and whether their children will be worse off than them. And I think this whole agenda around the future of education, the future of skills, is the way to respond to that fear. I think populists usually don't have the answers. They just scare people. The real answers are around figuring out how do you give everyone in society confidence and hope in the future, that they will have good prospects, that if something goes wrong in their life, they'll be taken care of. And so I think there's a huge agenda around education, reforming labor markets, and developing better safety nets that look after people when they fall on hard times.
Clearly, university has to adjust a lot and student has to work much harder, because during my year as the LSE, I just sit in the lecture and then 100% will be judged in the final exam. Wow. It means the whole year round you do not have to work that hard. But with portfolio system, it means that you have to prove yourself all along the year.
How things have changed.
Yeah, but that's technology disruption.
So that's it for this week.
Yes.
We'll come back and see you again next Thursday.
Yes, and we will keep you updated with Thai politics next week. Okay. Let's meet you again then. Kun Thepchai and Natha, Disan Natha. Thank you very much for watching and bye for now.
Good night สวัสดีครับ